Hello, everyone. This is Leah. Welcome back to the Nourish Sensitive podcast, where we explore the art of living deeply, feeling fully, and honoring the unique magic of being a highly sensitive person. I'm your host, Leah Tarleton. I'm an advocate for holistic wellness, soulful living, and helping sensitive souls find their unique path in life. Today, I am really excited to dive into a conversation about following your joy and discovering your unique purpose in life. As highly sensitive people, it can be easy to get caught up in overthinking, people pleasing, or trying to force clarity around what we're supposed to do with our lives. But the question we're asking today with my guest, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, is what if purpose isn't something that we have to figure out or chase down? What if it's something that is revealed to us moment by moment as we listen to what feels good, what feels true for us, and what feels aligned in our mind, in our body, in our spirit? So that's exactly why I invited my first guest. I just want to do a little celebration here because this is our first guest on the podcast, and her name is Janelle Lindemuth. Um, Janelle is a certified spiritual life and soul purpose coach who helps highly sensitive, high achieving women quiet the noise, break free from burnout, and reconnect with their higher self. So we're basically like business twin flames. As a sensitive soul herself, Janelle knows the power of tuning inward and following intuitive guidance. Her work is all about helping others discover the joy and freedom that comes from living in alignment with their purpose. So, Janelle and I first connected while we were planning a workshop together. I reached out to her on Instagram. I just felt drawn to her and looked at her website and I was like, wow, we have so much in common. We even have a little flower in our logo. Like, this is so perfect. But what we realized in the process of doing the workshop together, and this was our topic that we're going to talk about today, was that we were actually meant to collaborate in a different way. And that's right here on the podcast and just having a casual conversation to start. Um, so that's what brought us for this lighthearted and honest conversation about following our joy, embracing self-discovery, and really honoring the paths that we're meant to walk. In today's episode, we're going to really just have like an open-hearted conversation. I'm going to have Janelle share a little bit about her story, and we're going to do a reading from a book that I recently purchased I'm really excited about, and it's just going to be a really fun, juicy conversation for all the highly sensitive souls out there who are working on themselves. So, Janelle, I just want to invite you to share a little bit about yourself and your work.
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm very excited to be here today, and I'm so glad that our paths collided and we're able to have this beautiful conversation. So thank you. Yeah, so I am a certified spiritual life coach and soul purpose coach as well. And I help highly sensitive women who are also high achievers, who are, stuck in burnout and overwhelm and working to help them get out of that so that they can find balance and thrive. And the reason I really like to focus on this work is because this is pretty much my exact story that happened to me. It took me a while to figure out that I was highly sensitive. I think I knew that I was different than a lot of people, and at least the people in my circle. And I noticed it especially the most when I went into a corporate setting and was working in corporate. And I just started to notice that it was a lot harder for me than how I felt other people or how I perceived it was for other people. And so the burnout just came on so strong for me during that period of my life. And it got to the point where I ended up having to make a really drastic decision. And for me, it was completely walking away from that job and that career to try something else and to focus my energy on something that was calling to me. And it kind of led me there through a lot of synchronicities in my life. And things just kept pushing me in a different direction. And that kind of led me to this work. And specifically, why I wanted to focus on highly sensitive people, like I mentioned, is for me, I had a community around me, but I did not have, as far as I know, other highly sensitive people in my circle. And it I didn't really have anybody to talk to necessarily, and I think I didn't really know to what the words were to articulate them about how I was experiencing this. So for me, I felt kind of alone in my journey, and I really want to be there to be a guide and be that help, that hand to hold and walk with somebody through this journey because I know how challenging it can be to do it on your own. And so that's why I became a coach to help highly sensitive women walk this journey and help them through this process and know that they're not alone and know that there's nothing wrong with them at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing your story. And I think it's one that so many of us can relate to. I know I can, of just navigating traditional systems and typing work environments and realizing, there's something that doesn't fit for me here. And what is that? And that leads you on a journey of self-discovery too, of like, well, what is it about me that doesn't fit in this environment? So I really appreciate you for sharing that. And I'd love to hear more about, you mentioned just that calling that you felt or that inner calling. Sometimes it's hard to put words to it, but what was that for you? And like, was there a moment where you're like, oh, like a turning point or a moment of clarity where that calling just felt strong?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely calling me along the way and little whispers for a very long time. And I think for me, when I hit that burnout phase that I started, like when it got really bad, I think that was when it was like screaming at that point. That was like, do something. Like this is not, you're kind of off your path a little bit. And so I had some health complications and just like, you know, chronic fatigue and things like that. That I think for me was the real turning point where I was like, I don't want to feel this way. And I need to get myself better. And I want to feel better. But I think along the way, there were little nudges, like I said, and little whispers where I I did enjoy what I was doing, but I didn't feel like what I guess what we kind of call in the spiritual world like of service. Like I didn't feel like I was providing like a service or that there wasn't this great joy that I had when I woke up every morning. I had the Sunday scaries and I had this like dread every day going to
Mhm.
work where I'm like, I want to do something that's impactful. I want to do something where I can directly feel correlated to helping people. And I think I lost that a little bit in one of my transitions in my life because initially when I was started my career, I was working in fashion and I was working in the retail industry. So I was working with people one on one and I was talking with them and I was helping them feel beautiful through clothing and I was having those conversations. And when I made that transition from working in that space to sitting at a desk all day and working behind a computer, I lost that human interaction and I lost that instant. Gratification and excitement and thrill that I got working one on one with people and seeing the joy that I could bring to their life. And so I already kind of had a little bit of that taste of what my purpose was and how I was going to use that. But I think yeah, I took a different path along the way and I had to come back to that and find that.
Yeah. Yes. I love this because I think this speaks to a lot of highly sensitive people who feel that. I think you would call it an inner calling of like knowing that they're looking for something meaningful in their work and they really want to help people in a meaningful way and make that contribution. And sometimes our journey towards following that thing that is discovering ourselves and understanding that that's like a part of who we are and not something we can really change. Like we can't feel satisfied in certain jobs because it's not meeting that need. But also part of that journey, as you pointed out, is like listening to your body, right? Your body is going to lead you in the direction that you need to go in, even if that's sometimes a little painful. Even if it's like I am exhausted at the end of my workday, I am dreading going in the morning. Sunday is a horrible day for me. Sometimes to get to the light and to get to our joy, we have to go through those harder times. And it sounds like you really navigated that beautifully of like tapping in, listening to your body, not letting it to be get so bad to the point where you were forced out, but just like listening to it and being like, okay, how do I follow my joy here? And then taking little steps. So my question is like once you recognized that and you heard that inner calling and you honored what your body was saying, what steps did you take then to keep following your joy?
Yeah. So I think a big one was taking the step to to do something about it, right? To chase, or maybe not chase, but how to start to cultivate that joy. And so for me, and I don't always think that this is necessary, I guess it just depends where you are, but for me, I had to like kind of strip everything away. And so that for me was getting rid of the job because I didn't know how to make that transition with some of these things that were, I guess, in a way holding me back. There wasn't a way for me to like open the next chapter while still being in the current chapter. I believe that can work for some people, but for me, it was just I had to completely strip everything away and get back to the basics and kind of start and understand who I am and what my values were and what I needed to do to branch into that next chapter. So for me, it was quitting my job. It was walking away from what I thought, was how I was going to spend the rest of my life. Even though it was painful and not fun, I just assumed that's what everybody else was doing. And I started to listen as I started to think about this more. I started to have more synchronicities and I started to get more signs. And that
Mm-hmm.
led me to find a couple different books that were, about purpose and spirituality in general. I started to tap into spirituality. And I know as highly sensitive people, we are often looking for our purpose and looking for something bigger than ourselves. And so that really was drawing to me and I was drawn to it. Um, and once again, it was like I said, a couple different synchronicities along the way. And then I ended up finding spiritual life coaching and a certification program. And it was like, it's a much
Mm-hmm.
larger story, but there was just like, it basically was like, you have to do this right now. It was like screaming at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. And so I went headfirst into it, and it was the best decision I've ever made. The community and sisterhood that I found in the program and everything was just incredible. It was exactly what I needed. And yeah, I've just been trying to listen to those nudges and listen to those clues that I've been given along the way. And really, that's been really beautiful and really helpful. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, what an incredible story. And I felt myself just getting like excited for you and happy for you as you were discovering your path. Um, and I like how you said how when you started, once you got through kind of the almost dark night of the soul, the burnout phase, you started discovering yourself. You started saying, self, not self. Get rid of the job. That's not me. What is me? This is me. And then it just kind of got the wheel turning and got the journey started. And then as you learn more about yourself, you're like, oh, this program popped up. That's me. That feels like me. Okay, let me try that. And I loved how you said, I'm just going to dive in before I'm ready. Like, yes, as highly sensitive people, we might be a little more cautious, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But when you know deep down and you really tap into that inner center that knows, you don't have to spend so much time thinking about it. You can just go for it. And it sounds like you did. Like you really trusted yourself. And that led you to this big smile of like, wow, this is an amazing program. I've met so many wonderful people. And now look at you. You've started your own business. So I'd love to hear, yeah, like where are you now in that journey and with just starting your business?
Yeah. So, no, I think that's a really great thing that you said. And I think that's, kind of a touch on what we'll kind of probably talk a little bit later. But, I still at the end of the day was terrified to take that
Mm-hmm.
leap. But it felt so good I could not.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was so exciting and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be completely different than anything I've ever done." But I had so much joy around the decision. So for me, yeah, it was just like, how could I not do that? How could I not take this wonderful opportunity that felt just like absolute joy?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, as a new entrepreneur, there's been some bumps and there's been a lot of growth along the way, but it's also been really beautiful. And I think for me, it's been a beautiful way to honor my sensitivity as well. I really was not honoring it in my prior setting. If anything, I was kind of in denial for a long time as well. And I was struggling and fighting against it, thinking that I could change it or, manipulate it in some way that I was going to like make it work or change it and change this part about me. And that's just not possible. And so I've been really blessed with this opportunity to be able to create the schedule that I want and honor my boundaries, honor my body, take rest when I want. And I think that's been the most beautiful thing from this experience is just being able to, once again, really connect deep with myself and what it is that I need and want. And for me, it's been able to let me be more creative and I'm just able to grow and prosper so much as a person, which and then obviously helps my business as well. So,
Mhm.
I think overall it's been able to be a really beautiful process in realizing that I can let a lot of these societal expectations and ways of working of like a traditional, maybe non-highly sensitive person type work style, let those go and honor myself and honor my sensitivity and be able to listen to my body more. And I feel like I've become like such a stronger connection with myself and my sensitivity by doing that.
Mm, mm. So juicy. I love this. And I relate to this. Just this idea of like, yeah, when you lean into self-trust and you listen to what your body is telling you and you have courage, right? Because you said like, I was not, and I've felt this way many times too. It's like you're going to be scared when you start following your path. You're going to be terrified. You might lose sleep at night. You might have health issues that come up because you're doing something that's out of the ordinary, off the beaten path. And there are going to be challenges along the way. But I think your story, Janelle, is like a perfect testament to just being able to sit with that and be like, this is bigger than me. This is very important to me. And I'm going to tap into my heart and my courage so that I can see this through. Um, and you're doing it. So I think this is going to be very inspiring for people to hear. For my own part, that's been exactly my experience as well. Just like leaning into the discomfort and doing things before I'm ready, kind of just jumping in head first. And I know that doesn't always come naturally to us as sensitive people, but the message I want people to know is like, just because you're scared doesn't mean you can't do it. And to
Mhm.
really tap into that deep place within yourself and know that it's possible, you know?
Absolutely.
So on that note, I kind of want to jump into this wonderful book that I've been reading. So I'm just going to show you guys because the cover just speaks for itself. Like, look at this art. It's so colorful, flowers, like everything Janelle and I love. Rainbow vibes. And this book is called Women Living Deliciously. The author is Florence Given. She's a three times best-selling author. She's an artist, and honestly, she's inspired me so much. She's like the leader of our generation in terms of self-love and just feminism and stepping into your purpose. So I wanted to read just a quick little excerpt from this book. It's not a promotion. She's not paying me to do this. I just really love her writing. And she's so inspiring. And I just started the book myself, but I skipped ahead to find this passage. This comes from just a little context here. This comes from the second part of the book. It's called Planting, Rediscovering You. And the chapter I'm going to read from is called Living a Delicious Life of Your Own Design. And the section is Using Our Desires to Shape Our Lives. So I'm going to read it, and then I'd love to hear just like your reflections, Janelle, um, and we'll have a little conversation around it.
Yeah.
Okay, so using our desires to shape our lives. Instead of morphing and contorting ourselves to fit into a life that looks good to others, but ultimately doesn't feel good to live, we can start by honoring those intuitive hunches, regardless of what people think. By listening to our bodies, we can prioritize how our lives feel over how they look. Although it might look good to get a corporate job and help you receive lots of praise from your parents, You won't feel good about it if you've always wanted to be an artist. In order to discern what looks good from what feels good, we need to consider whether the excitement comes from external approval or from within us. If we cannot stick to a decision without the external approval or praise of others, we are doing it because it looks good, not because it feels good. This is a decision made from pleasing and will pull us out of alignment. A decision that feels good is made whether people approve or not. Sometimes our desires will align with what others want for us, and that's one hell of a bonus. But their approval cannot be used as the fucking compass. I love how she just says it. The compass for our choices has to come from within.
Hmm, that's juicy.
Isn't it? I mean, it's living deliciously.
Yeah.
Like that word carries a vibe.
Yeah. I think that one's gonna hit for so many, especially in the sensitive community, because of people pleasing. And I
hmm
think, yeah, that's just like so ingrained in us. At least specifically, I can speak for myself. I feel like it's been ingrained for me from a very young age, um, because I was called, that I was being too sensitive or that I was feeling too much. And so I questioned myself and my thoughts and my feelings. And I often just wanted to please everybody else around me. And so it started from a very, very, very young age for me. Um, so I think that's going to speak to a lot of people in that regard of just what does that look like? How do I start removing that external validation and people pleasing and start to turn inward and listen to my intuition? And that one can be really challenging. That one can be hard because you're so ingrained to shut it off. We've become so good at practicing that and shutting it off. And yeah, I'll just leave it with that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're hitting all over it. And I think, yeah, that challenge of being highly sensitive and having people gaslight our feelings or tell us that how we're feeling is too much or doesn't make sense or it's not enough in some way. Over
Mhm.
time, that diminishes our inner knowing and our ability to feel what we need to feel in order to figure out self, not self, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned boundaries when we are people pleasing and when we're trying to look good, to use Florence's words and get that external praise and validation, it's really hard to stay connected to who we are and what we want out of life. Um, and, I think this also builds on what we were talking about before of like the body is the way. What you feel physically, and I know it can be hard because I work with women all the time who are struggling with burnout, and I know you do too. You just want it to stop. You're like, I want my digestion to regulate. I want to get sleep at night. Like, I'm so overwhelmed and this is awful and I'm stressed. But if you can relax into that and really understand that your symptoms are just messengers. They're just wise messengers from yourself, from your higher self, honestly,
Mhm.
pointing you in the right direction. Um, then you can make some steps. You can take the steps to live a life that's more aligned with you.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to ask you, just, put your own little coaching hat on for a second for our listeners and maybe help us understand how how can we learn to trust and act on our desires even when they feel risky or they go against what others expect of us?
Yeah. I think I mean, like everything, it's a practice. It's a practice to tap in. And I think, that kind of goes back to some fundamentals of sitting in silence and sitting in meditation and doing some deep breaths to connect to our body, to understand what those nudges are or how our inner self and how our higher self is connecting with us and trying to send us those messages. And if we start to connect and then understand, I think it becomes more of a partnership and it doesn't feel like this, I guess, information or something coming from outside of ourselves and we're questioning it. It becomes a partnership. we're partnering with ourself, with our higher self, and we know what that sounds like and what that feels like. So I think just understanding and gaining the knowledge on what that is for you, and it'll always be different for different people. So just tapping in and maybe even understanding a little bit more about the different clairs that are out there and how you get messages and what that feels like in your body. And
Mhm.
then as you, like I said, you begin to grow that bond, then you'll start to understand and know where those messages are coming from and the fact that they're not like anything to be afraid of and that they're leading you in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the big word here is just trust
Yeah.
with a big capital T. Trust that you have something inside you that's very powerful and very connected to something greater that will help you if you let it and if you trust it.
Mhm.
And you also, I know we have like lots of little HSPs and friends that are just starting their spiritual journeys and like starting to pull cards and like getting to know their spirituality and figuring out what that looks like for them. And it sounds like for both you and me, it's that synchronicity that you start to encounter, those little nudges where you're like, that feels like a wink. That feels like something greater than the thoughts in my head that I'm so identified with and my little fears and things. It's bigger than that, and it's pointing me in that direction. Um, and I think what I would add to what you said is just again coming back to your body, what feels good, what
Mhm.
feels good, and you have to kind of figure that out for yourself. Um, but I think the key word there is joy. Joy is what lights you up. You know,
Yeah.
when you start smiling, when you start laughing, when you have something to say, that's your joy. When you
Mhm.
feel called to stand up and move around and put on some music, that's your joy. And what's not your joy? Sitting in the car, at 8 o'clock in the morning outside the building to your full-time job, just trying to get the courage to go in because you just hate it so much. Like, that's not following your joy. That's following fear and following, the rules, if you will. Um, so if you resonate with this message, pick up this book because this girl will teach you how to not follow the rules. Um, and I'd also love to hear from you, Janelle. If someone is maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by this, they're just like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but like it's connecting on some level. What advice would you give a sensitive person who's just starting out to kind of start small and feeling more connected to their joy and feeling connected to their intuition?
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest one, and you could start with honestly just like 1 minute or 2 minutes, make it super digestible, is just sitting somewhere in silence. Whether that's putting headphones on, noise canceling headphones to kind of, if you have to get rid of any other noise or anything else that's going on around you, to just sit. No phones, nothing. You can close your eyes and just sit with yourself and sit with your body. And obviously, adding in some deep breathing would be beautiful too. But it's just that moment to kind of silence everything around you. And that's where then you can start to tap in and start to connect more with those nudges that your body's giving you and that inner guidance. And and then you can slowly work that up however long you need. And you may even find that you sit there even longer. 1 minute turns to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But to make it super digestible, just start super small with a minute, 2 minutes, and just connect to your body and see how that feels and see and notice anything that may come up for you. And also, it's just really great in this. I mean, obviously, as HSPs in an overstimulating world and sensory galore, it's just beautiful to sit and recharge and use those moments to shut out the world, if you will. So it's kind of dual purpose in that way, but you're really trying to connect and listen to it right now because your inner guidance and your higher self is kind of at a whisper or really quiet at this point. It will get louder, and it's a practice to make it louder and be able to hear it.
Hmm.
And so it is that practice. So right now you kind of have to tune out everything else to really listen to those whispers.
I love that. Such an important part. And I would add, another small step here is in order to do what you've just suggested, getting really clear with your boundaries because it's going to be hard to take that time to
Mm.
sit in silence and be alone with yourself if you always have people pecking at you and needing something from you and all the little things that get in the way of us having our self-care, our alone time that we need. Um, so one thing I would suggest is just maybe doing a little inventory of the things that are currently blocking you from having that time. And you don't have to do anything right away. Maybe just start there with what is in the way of me having some noiseless time to just be present, maybe do some meditation or reflection. And pick one, pick the this whichever one you feel comfortable with and start to set a boundary there. These are the little baby steps that are going to get you moving in the direction of your joy and away from the things that are either blocking you from your joy or just straight up stealing your joy and making you feel miserable.
Mm.
Um, so I love this conversation, and I think this is going to be so helpful for people. And I think it could even be a few more conversations, just expanding on this idea of like what that journey looks like of finding your purpose in life and using your sensitivity to guide you there. I think that's a good point to make too, is like what you have inside you, your sensitivity, your deep feeling nature is a tool. It's a gift, it's an edge, if you will. And when you really honor it and you stop and you're able to move past any self-critical thoughts around that way of being in the world, that's when you can start to really tap in and connect with that higher self.
Mm.
To Janelle's point of it gets louder over time. It starts as a tiny little whisper, almost barely perceptible through the noise, but it gets louder over time and you find your
Mhm.
way. And
Yes.
Janelle and I are great examples of that,
Mm.
living our purpose, our dharma, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
I want to pull a card. I'm definitely feeling called um, to connect with the kind of the core message from this conversation and what we want our listeners to walk away with from this conversation. And then I'll invite you, Janelle, to share your kind of one takeaway or what you want our listeners to walk away with, and we will wrap up. Okay. So we are just asking, oop, cards are flying out of the deck already. Good God. For those who are just new to pulling cards, that will happen sometimes. You're going to pull a card and things are flying out. Just set them aside. Okay, so we're asking Spirit, what do you want our listeners to take away from this conversation? And also for Janelle and I, because we're on the journey too.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, I love this. So I actually pulled the patience card.
Mm.
Patience. What's coming through for you intuitively, just hearing that word from this conversation?
Yeah, I think just honoring the softness, because I think when we talk about soul purpose in general, like there's this urgency to want to know what it is right away and to yeah, because you're kind of just you're feeling disconnected or that burnout, right? And you're just like you just need to know. And so I think just honoring that softness and that patience and also knowing that it's already within you and you have that knowledge. So just practicing that patience with yourself and it will come to you at the right time that it's supposed to come to you, divine guidance, and just allowing that to come when you need it most.
I feel that. And I think another way to say that too is just slow down.
Mhm.
slow
Yeah.
down, and you have all the time you need.
Mm-hmm.
This is your life. Take it easy and slow down, and it's going to be
Yeah.
okay. And then the card that flew out, this is funny, stories.
Mm.
Stories. And you can see this card. I'll share my insights. This card has a hand coming out of a book that's sort of like dripping and oozing. It's kind of got like a dark feeling to it.
It does.
But at the top are little hearts flying out of the story and at the bottom too. So I think the message that Spirit wanted us to hear in these card pulls, patience and stories, is be careful what you tell yourself. Your mind is a
Mm.
powerful tool. And one of the things that can make you feel impatient on your journey is that you're telling yourself a story about where you should be by now, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I know as business owners and entrepreneurs, we've walked that path of like, I need to be this and I need to be that. And sometimes you need to stop the story, get out of your own head for a minute, tap into your intuition, ground, go slow, and remember that at least for me on my journey, the story is bigger than you. There's an
Mm-hmm.
unfolding story, and so you just have to be patient with it and you'll find your way.
Absolutely. I love that. I love those
So
cards too.
I know for those interested, shout out to Jewel Mondro. She's been a wonderful friend and spiritual teacher of mine, and this is her Ritual Soul Oracle deck. I'll link it in the show notes for anyone that wants to explore, dip their toes in the water. Well, this
Yeah.
has been so amazing, Janelle, and I'd love to just ask you one message, whatever's coming through from your heart or piece of encouragement for our listeners to guide them towards greater nourishment and wholeness in their life.
Yeah. Um, I
Take
think
your
just,
time.
yeah, I think once again, just like honoring that softness and knowing like wherever you are in this soul purpose journey of yours, whether that's you're just learning about it today, you're starting to get curious about it, or you're thinking about it, or you're actively taking steps to find it and to reconnect with it again. Um, that you're already doing like such beautiful, beautiful work for yourselves. And, a lot of people don't start this journey and struggle because of fear and so many other expectations and things going on. And so just knowing that you're starting to think about it and take this step is already such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And so just taking a moment to find that gratitude for yourself. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Janelle and I are very proud of you for taking that step.
Yeah.
Whoever is listening out here who's connecting with this, we're proud of you. Keep going.
Yeah.
We're just a few
Yeah.
steps ahead.
Hmm.
Um, Wonderful. Well, Janelle, how can our listeners stay connected with you and your work?
Absolutely. So you can find me on online. I have a website at my name, so JanelleLindemuth.com. And then I'm also on Instagram at highly sensitive life coach.
Yay. I love Janelle's account. I love her energy, everything she's putting out there. And I hope that everyone will go give her a follow and say hi. Um, well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I feel so whole, and I hope to have you back soon, Janelle.
Thank you.
Take care.